Hi, this is Scott with eTrailer. Today we're taking a look at and installing the Roadmaster Universal Diode Wiring Kit for our 2021 Lincoln Nautilus. What our diode wiring kit is going to do for you is it's going to give you everything you need to keep you legal going down the road, and it's also going to let people behind you know what your intentions are when you're towing your vehicle behind your RV. This is going to end up giving you signals from your RV to the back of your towed vehicle. It's going to give you your brake lights, it's going to give you your tail lights, your left turn, and your right turn signals. Everything you're going to need to stay legal. This is going to work out really good for being able to just plug right in. All you're going to have to do is just plug your cord right into this. It's going to be a permanent setup, so you don't have any magnets or lights or wires hanging over your vehicle. This is just a plug and play setup that'll get you on the road quick and easy when you're looking to go flat towing. Now keep in mind, when you're looking for a diode wiring kit, there are a bunch of different kits available. It really just depends on what you need for your setup. Our neighbor already had a tow bar with all the wiring set up and the safety cables on it, so all they needed was just the basic universal kit. So if you decide on what you need, take a look at our site, and we have a bunch of different options available to get you all set up for flat towing. So your base plate is going to be one of your main 5 components that you're going to need to get started with flat towing. So it's going to be your base plate to hook up your tow bar to. So you're going to need your tow bar. Then you're going to need your safety cables. You're going to need some form of diode wiring as well. So that's something that's going to help you get your lights to the back of your vehicle. And some type of braking system, that's something you're definitely going to have as well. And it's definitely an essential part of your flat towing needs. Now we're underneath the hood of our Lincoln, and there's a couple other things that I'm going to recommend that you get. And you're going to definitely need to get a battery disconnect system. They're really nice if you don't feel like getting out of your vehicle all the time to undo your battery when you're going to flat tow. This is really going to make things a lot easier for you. It's going to give you a button inside your vehicle that you can push, and that's one of the things you're probably going to need. Another thing you're going to need is the charge line kit, and that's a pretty simple setup. We have it set up right over here, and what that's going to do for you is going to charge your battery while you're going down the road, and it's going to make sure that you have some charge in your battery once you get to your campsite. And another thing you want to remember is when you go to get your diode wiring set up and you order that part, you're going to want to pick up 2 more diodes for that, just so you're going to be able to get power to your modules in the back of your taillights. So if you have any questions or comments about this diode wiring for your Lincoln, you can always get a hold of one of our experts here at eTrailer, or you could leave a comment down below and we'd be glad to hear from you. Now, as far as installation goes, this is pretty intense, and it is really difficult. As a matter of fact, this entire flat tow setup is really difficult to do, but you can do it. It is something you can get done. Just make sure you set aside quite a bit of time, because your vehicle will be apart for a while you're doing this. If it's something you don't have time to do yourself, or you don't have the space or the tools, you can also take a look at our dealer locator and get something done for you locally. If it's something you feel like tackling yourself, stick around, watch our video, and we'll help you get it installed. So to begin our installation, we ended up running our wires up here to the front where they're going to end up popping out. And we ran them across, up behind our base plate. We came up and through. As you can see, we came around our intercooler tubing, came up beside our frame, where we ran up behind our headlight. Now we came up with our wiring up underneath of our hood. We're over by the air filter housing and somewhat close to the battery on our driver's side. And before we route our wires all the way to the back, one little thing I like to do is get my wiring ran up to where I'm going to have it underneath of the hood of my vehicle, and then I'll split off all of my white wire all the way back to where I can tuck it up over by the headlight, and then I'll just I'll cut off a piece and run it up and crimp on a ring terminal. And what I did is I mounted it to a factory ground post that we have right here on our shock tower, and just back that off, put your ring terminal in place, tighten it back down, and you have a good ground. So we came down the firewall and we ended up tying off to some of our lines that are pre-existing, and we just started working our way back. Now we did have to undo this cover to access this, and this is also going to help protect our wires. So we just kept running along until we got back here, kind of towards our gas tank area. And we went around our gas tank, tying off all the way around the side over here. Then we came up over towards where our gas tank strap is, so we tied off here. Then we came up over our rear cross member, making sure to tie it up so we're not getting into any type of moving parts or anything hot, and came up over that out of the way. Then we ended up jumping over to the side of our cross member, coming over here to our driver's side, and ended up dropping out with our wires and split up our yellow wire and our brown wire here. Now our green wire above our cross member, we ended up splitting it off and then running across, following some pre-existing wiring harness, ran over, ended up over, so we have our single green wire ran over to our passenger side. Now we have our diode here, and this one's going to be the one we have our brown wires going into, which will be our taillights on the driver's side. Now we have our wire that comes from the front, that will come from our RV signal that comes in. Now we have that plugged into our inside, and we also have a jumper wire that comes off of that and then runs over to our passenger side. Now for our wire that's over on the other side of our diode, this one will go up. Now usually you can do these behind your taillights, but with these, there's no room behind the taillight to install these. So what we had to do is run jumper wires out from up above. So what we did is our signal coming in, we end up having to go up to our light and end up finding the harness and testing the harness. And when we did, we found the purple wire with the white stripe that was going to be our signal for our taillights. So what we had to do is we had to snip the wire on the plug up there, and then we ended up having to take the wiring harness side of the wire that we cut, and we ended up putting this on there as an extension and ran it down and brought that to our inside of our diode. Now on the other end of that wire that we cut, we ended up running another extension off of that and then down here to this, and then that ended up being our out wire. Now the out wire runs up and out to the plug. Now on our other side, our diode for our turn signal and brake signal, this is our yellow wire that comes off of our harness. We have one of those that runs to the inside of that, and then another one that runs to the in. Now this one is going up, and then it will come from the wiring harness up above, where we had to cut into the yellow wire with a green stripe. And we did the same thing as we did here. We just basically made extensions off of that. Now from the harness of that wire that we cut, this wire comes off of that from the harness side, comes down into our in. And then for the plug side going out, we had to run this extension off and up and out of our diode, and then that will power our light. On our passenger side, we have our diode set up here. Now we have our jumper wire, which is our brown wire, which will be our tail light signal for our passenger side. We just ran that across, and we'll tie this wire up behind our fascia. Now we have our other brown wire, which we have for an extension, which we did the same process as we did on the other side. Now this brown wire goes up to the harness, and that one will come from the harness side from the wire that is the color white with an orange stripe. So we did the same thing as we cut that wire up there on our harness, and then we extended this brown wire we have to the harness end of that wire, then brought that into our inside of our diode. Now the side where it goes out to the plug that we cut, we ended up putting this extension on from the outside of the diode. Now for our side here, other side of our diodes, this one will be our green wire, which will be our turn signal and brake signal. We have our green wire that comes from the front, and that's going to go up into our diode. And then now, same thing, we have our green wire that comes down from up above, and this one will go from our purple wire with a green stripe, and we went ahead and cut that up there. So this one will come from our harness side and then go into our diode, and this side comes out of our diode that goes up to the plug side that connects to our brake light. Now all we'll do next is we'll end up taking our diodes, and we have double stick tape. We'll just go ahead and stick these up here on both sides with both of them, and we'll do the same on the other side. After we got our two diodes put in for our signals, we found out that after we plugged it in to our test box and then we turned off our battery, because it has to be battery cut off for tow mode, what we found out is after we plugged it in, we did not have power running back to our taillights. All we had was just taillight signal themselves. We didn't have turn or brake. So what we found out is we had to run some tests, and we got into our harness up above and tested it out, and we found out that our purple wire on each side of our vehicle that's in our harness and the plug is our constant power wire. Now what that does is that constantly powers the LED module inside of our taillight assembly that operates our brakes and turn signals. So what we had to do is add another diode. So what we did is we cut our purple wire up above, and we ended up snipping that in half, and then we tied a wire onto it on the plug side going out, ran a wire down, and that ended up going to our outside of our diode. Then we took the wire side that come from our harness. We ended up running an extension off of that and then down. So we ended up running into one of the posts on our inside of our diode. Now to get power to this diode, this being our power diode running to our power for our module, we ended up tapping into our brown wire that comes from the front, which is actually our tail light circuit, which gives us constant power to the rear, so that worked. So we ended up tapping into the brown wire that we ended up jumping across, and so what we did, tapped into it and then ran it to the other side of the diode. Now that powers our diode up to our plug from the front of the vehicle. Now we came across with our brown wire that was already pre-existing, and what we ended up doing is jumping off of that as well. Now keep in mind, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're going off your brown wire that comes from your trailer wiring that runs from the front of the vehicle all the way back. Make sure you're running that off of your diode wiring that comes from the front. Now, so what we ended up doing is splitting off of this one as well with our brown wire. And then we ended up having the same type of deals we did on the other side. We have our outside that runs out and then goes up to the plug side of our split wire behind our tail light. Now we did the same thing. We have our wire. This wire here will come from the harness side of the cut we made and go to the in side of our diode. And then right here we have our wire that we tapped off of, which is our taillight wire that gives us constant power that also runs in to the inside of this diode. And so what we ended up with is getting power to them, but keep in mind, if you use a test box, you're not going to get a good test. You're going to have to actually plug into the vehicle that you're going to be using to test it, because when you use a test box, you're only going to get one signal out of it per test. So with your doing this, you're going to need your constant tail light signal from your vehicles in order to make sure that your lights are functioning properly. Now we'll come up here and we'll get our plug installed. We're going to have our 4-pole wiring here. Now on ours, we do have a charge line kit going into this one, so that will be our red wire that goes into the center. So now all we need to do is just go around our plug, and it's going to be abbreviated around it. So here we have TM, so that's going to be trailer marker, and that's going to be our brown wire. We'll go ahead and get our screw backed out. And now I do have all my wires stripped back. The best way to do that is just try and get it to a certain length, kind of test it out. Go short it first and see how far it's going to sit down in these sockets. Best thing to do is try and have where you're not seeing any bare wire coming out of your socket, where it's just right down where you have some sheathing going just down in. Well, now all I'm going to do is take my brown wire for my trailer marker, and may need to back that out a little bit more. We'll get that pushed down in, and if it kind of unravels on you, just go ahead and pull that back out and just get that retwisted. And if it keeps doing it, just back your screw out just a little bit more. Now we'll just tighten down our screw. Now we'll just go around our plug and repeat that process with all of our labeled terminals and get our wires in place. Now, one thing to remember before you put all your wires on is don't forget to put the boot on here. I've done it before where I forgot to put this on. I had to take it all back apart and put this on. So always remember to run this over your wire before you even start doing this. Another thing that's a good little tip to do, if you plan on putting this wire loom on, usually what I try and do is I'll put this on first as well before I put the boot on, and then push it down my wires. It just makes it a whole lot easier to get on, and make sure you put tape around each end, and that'll keep it in place. So what we're going to do now is I went ahead and filled this up with some silicone sealant, and what that's going to do is keep corrosion from happening in here, and got our rubber boot put back in place. So now with everything working, we're going to go ahead and get our plug put in place. After we tested everything worked out really good for this one. With that all done, that'll do it for installation of our Roadmaster diode wiring kit on our 2021 Lincoln Nautilus. I'm Scott with eTrailer, and thanks for watching.